Excellencies, distinguished members of the jury, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I have the honor to declare open the session of the working group on the Universal Periodic Review, UPR, of the 2018 International Model UN Human Rights Council. It is a great honor and pleasure for me to preside over this UPR session again as the president of the UPR working group. 4 states will be reviewed during this year's session, starting today with the review of the Republic of Korea in the morning and Japan in the afternoon. I now have the honor to warmly welcome Her Excellency Ms. Im Hyun-jin, Head of Delegation of the Republic of Korea, and her distinguished delegation, and give Her Excellency the floor to introduce the national report. Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Honorable President, distinguished delegations of the Human Rights Council, the Republic of Korea would like to welcome all states to the new cycle of the Universal Periodic Review 2018. As a responsible member of the Human Rights Council, having served its presidency in 2016, ROK again congratulates the central role of the UPR mechanisms in the human rights mechanisms. In this regard, ROK will also keep fully committed to promoting and also protecting the value of international human rights. Regarding freedom of opinion and expression, ROK has taken measures by organizing a committee from the civil sector and academia to carry out inquiries, held amendment reviews on conscientious objectors, and sought to amend the Information and Communications Network Act. ROK strives to further its recommendations through planning consultations on the conscientious objectors, monitoring the police to take human rights training, as well as revising legislations to ensure freedom of assembly. ROK further adopts specific legislation to guarantee the exercise of the rights of freedom of opinion and expression, and ensure that such laws conform with the international standards. Second, with human trafficking, ROK supports recommendation in regard to strengthening national and international cooperation against human trafficking. The government has provided trafficking investigations, prosecutions, and convictions, as well as services to 7,400 potential victims. Also in full support of the recommendation 124.43 to ratify the protocol to prevent, suppress, and punish the human trafficking in persons, the government has ratified the protocol in November 2015, subsequently taken into effect. The Criminal Act was also amended to stipulate the acts and articles of the protocol, and to specify and expand the definition of human trafficking in line with the principles of liability. Third, discussing the right of the children, ROK agrees with the necessity of the universal birth registration. However, due to domestic concerns regarding its side effects, the government shall take careful measures by collecting various opinions from different sectors. As a complementary measure, the birth of a child of foreign nationals born in the ROK shall be registered in accordance with the laws of their own countries, regardless of whether the parents are undocumented migrants or not. As a response to 130.75, regarding the concern of the corporal punishment, the enforcement decree of the elementary and secondary education has been amended in 2011 and is still in effect. Concerning the environmentally linked aspect of human rights, the Special Rapporteur expressed its concern on the information gaps in the acts of the registration and evaluation of chemical substances. Accordingly, the Rapporteur recommended that the ROK increase efforts to identify the harms of pre-existing industrial chemicals. In response, the Korean government has already registered 8,459 chemicals out of the 15,800 used in the ROK to the list of priority existing chemicals. And the ROK will further facilitate the process by strengthening the infrastructure needed to generate information. ROK will strive to fulfill the duty of ensuring that the information necessary to prevent exposure and also seek remedy to hazardous substances. Finally, regarding the gender discrimination in employment, ROK continues to strengthen affirmative action. Ministry of Employment and Labor announced 27 companies in violation of the action in 2017 for the first time based on the women employment standards. ROK also supports job seeking of women with career breaks through 155 supporting centers nationwide. Moreover, regarding recommendations in sexual violence prevention, such as 130.19, ROK revised and implemented the guidelines for sexual harassment and sexual violence prevention in June 2018. The Article 6, 7, 9, 10 emphasize counseling and legal support, whereas Article 8 and 17 addresses prevention education. ROK seeks to remain committed to the actively and supporting all recommendations from this session, and also like to promote and protect the values of international human rights through the participation in this Universal Periodic Review. Thank you.
I thank Her Excellency Ms. Kim Hyun-jin for the presentation and her presence today with us. We shall now start with our interactive dialogue. The first speaker on the list of speakers is the distinguished representative of Iran. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Our delegation is concerned about the strict elections law that take effect a few months before elections, which prohibits most speech that either supports or criticizes a particular candidate or party. Our delegation would like the delegation of ROK to explain the legislation in regard to the issue of freedom of expression. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Delegate from Iran. To explain the ROK's efforts, having championed the democratic miracle known as the candlelight protests, the Ministry of Interior and Safety and Science and ICT of the ROK would like to proudly express its contribution to the international protection of the right to expression and association. It will sustain these efforts through continuous engagement in multilateral forms of dialogue and cooperation, which is why this delegate would like to thank the delegation of Iran for its concerns. Regarding the question raised from the representative of Iran, the ROK has been currently making efforts in order to advance its human rights and freedom of expression regarding the Public Official Election Act, especially regarding the Article 110, which has been constantly reminded by human rights committees, as well as recommending states that it would need to be amended or abolished. Regarding this issue, this delegate is aware of the implementation of such recommendations being insufficient. However, the delegation would like to acknowledge the fact that the Article 110 in 2015 has been amended, and in order for no false information to be published of the candidates and related family members, while regarding the freedom of expression within the citizens. And this would not be applied where this information is true and correct. Regarding the public interest, it says it has been enacted that no one should openly insult specific regions or units or its people, or regarding specific genders regarding the public official election. For these election campaigns regarding to a political party or candidate or his family can deprive of his human rights or be abolished of human rights. Thus, however, this delegate would like to express its determination in implementing such measures through regarding more enjoyment of the human rights. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker on the list is the distinguished representative of the Russian Federation. Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you, Excellency. The delegation of Russia noted that the Republic of Korea is keen to prevent human trafficking as well as providing support to victims. Regarding this promising plan, the delegation of Russia would like to know if there's any comprehensive action plan in the national level, especially since prevention as such usually requires different departments to cooperate. Thank you.
We thank delegation of Russia for their sustained interest and support in
in solving this global issue of human trafficking. Currently, the Republic of Korea administers various training programs on a national level provided to public officials in ensuring that they are aware of the revised and amended criminal code, which was revised in 2013, so that they are aware of the comprehensive and more defined parameter of what human trafficking is comprised of. And Republic of Korea also plans to form a more cooperative relationship with the NGOs, since due to the delicate nature of human trafficking, it is essential that we communicate with the victims through a safer and more open environment. And lastly, the Republic of Korea is aware of the limited nature of its current criminal code, in that it does not cover the methods or the various forms of human trafficking as defined by the UN protocol, and it is seeking to amend its national legislation in accordance with those. Thank you.
Thank you. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of the Solomon Islands. Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you, Your Honorable Chair. The delegation from Solomon Islands acknowledged the progress being made by the Republic of Korea's government on safeguarding the right to education of children. However, the delegation of Solomon Islands is concerned about the right to education of disabled children, for example, the discrimination faced by them, and would thus like to ask the delegation of ROK the measures taken in this regard. Thank you.
Honorable Chair, and thank you for the delegate of Solomon Islands for providing a very fruitful question to the delegation of the Republic of Korea. And in order to answer to the question, from 2015, the government had developed a plan to promote the basic rights of the child, and of course the education, and of course the education for the disabled children is part of them. And from 2016, the National Human Rights Commission of Korea had established a division for children and juveniles and the Child Rights Committee to strengthen independent monitoring of the implementation of the provisions of the Convention on the Rights of the Child. So the Republic of Korea currently is aware of and recognizes that disabled children are partly and up to some extent are discriminated in being provided the education. So the Republic of Korea and its government would like to utilize the National Human Rights Commission of Korea and its following committee in order to monitor how well the education is provided to the disabled students, and the South Korean government will do its best in order to minimize the disparity between the amount, not only the amount, but also the quality of the education that is provided to the both students and the disabled students in South Korea. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker on our list is the distinguished representative of Ecuador. Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you, Your Honorable Chair and distinguished delegates. The Ecuadorian delegation recognized the current achievements of the Republic of Korea in their increased efforts in identifying harmful chemicals and creating a compiled list of priority existing chemicals. It is noted that the delegation of the Republic of Korea is committed in strengthening its current resources in this regard. The delegation of Ecuador wishes to invite the delegation of the Republic of Korea to elaborate on the concrete measures that will be taken beyond the identification of these chemicals for data collection. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegation of Ecuador, for their interest. In response to the concerns expressed by the delegation of Ecuador, the Ministries of Environment and of Land, Infrastructure and Transport would like to respond that there have been various acts that have been passed in order to fill the information gaps that were expressed, that were mentioned by the Special Rapporteur on the management and disposal of hazardous waste. In regards to the first act that was enacted, this ministry would like to notify that the ARECS Act was put into force. This act also known as the Act on the Registration and Evaluation of Chemical Substances, has changed the law in a manner in which corporations must submit their hazardous chemicals for reevaluation after having changed the intent of the product. For example, the product known as oxysaksak was responsible for hundreds of casualties after having been changed from a carpet substance to a humidifier substance. So thus, in order to solve such problems, we have required these companies to resubmit their data, and moreover, we are currently in the process of strengthening relevant infrastructures in concern to collecting information. So thus, although it has only been 2 years since the report of the Special Rapporteur was published, the delegation of the ROK has collected around over 8,000 information on 8,000 chemical substances, and out of 15,800. Thank you for your question.
Thank you. The next delegation on our list is the distinguished representative of Mongolia. Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. The delegation of Mongolia recognizes the Republic of Korea government's effort in helping women to seek jobs. However, statistics do show that among ROK's female public servants, a substantial percentage have been female within the public servants. Our delegation is concerned that the real difficulty is not in the ability to seek jobs, but to achieve equal job mobility within the workplace. Our delegation wishes to invite ROK delegates to respond to our concern. Thank you.
Thank you, delegation of Mongolia, for the question. And this Ministry of Employment and Labor would like to answer about the ability of women in workplaces, that the government is actually taking several measures to guarantee that women can also work on the higher level of jobs and to prevent the glass ceiling problem. First, the government is actually providing an occupational education that can enable women to be promoted and become leaders in their companies and public institutions. Moreover, the government also provides the affirmative action, which is to facilitate women's employment both in the ratio of women workers, but also in the ratio of women in higher promotions. And the government also notifies several companies and firms that are under the standard of the ratio of women employment to prevent women from being overlooked or being ignored in the firms. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker on our list of speakers is the distinguished representative of Spain. Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. The international community, including the UN Human Rights Committee, has expressed concerns over the use of the criminal defamation law by the South Korean government to censor opinions considered against public interest by the state. Considering the South Korean constitution's provision of a freedom of speech, and especially considering the new president's regime, can the South Korean government elaborate on the measures taken to address this issue?
Thank you. The delegation understands the internationally recognized human rights are inherent, lawful, entitlements requiring authorities to take steps to respect and fulfill them. In this regard, it recognizes the issue that the recommended state of Spain has brought up. Regarding the defamation law and libel and slander law, so in the Republic of Korea, defamation is a criminal offense under the criminal code and an unlawful act under the civil code. Although criminal prosecutions have decreased, the filing of civil defamation suits and accusations of criminal defamation exert a significant chilling effect on freedom of expression. Taking this under consideration, this delegation is fully aware of the fact that the courts and the ROK have played an important role in upholding the right of freedom of expression in case where there have been limitations to right. So according to the following legal and standard laws, if the government finds prohibited materials, it has the authority to warn the user. We do take into consideration under the Article 19 of the ICCPR to protect the individual public figures' rights in any measures. Thank you.
Thank you. The next delegation is the distinguished representative of Mexico. Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chairperson. We'd like to first of all appreciate the above-mentioned protocols in 2017 that were ratified. However, as mentioned in the national report, the government provided the trafficking investigations and the prosecutions and convictions by 2017. However, it is reported in the Trafficking in Persons report in 2018 of the Department of State that the United States, that the government of the Republic of Korea did not take any initiative to persecution or the trafficking status right now. And in addition, out of the 127 convicting offenders in 2016, 42 received suspended sentences and were only sentenced to fines. How does the government assure that there is a deterrence and a right prosecution process in the status quo?
Thank you, delegation from Mexico. The Republic of Korean government is currently aware of the most fundamental issue with the lack of persecution is that the application of outdated legislations. For example, rather than the revised criminal code of 2013, many of the law enforcement agents refer back to the less stringent 2004 Act on Punishment of Acts of Arranging Sexual Traffic or Labor, or Child and Youth Protection Act, which provide less stringent punishment. And aware of this problem, the Ministry of Justice has been holding and is planning to further hold a series of training courses and seminars for prosecutors, judges, and other law enforcement officers to further coerce and promote the application of the revised criminal code. And another fundamental issue with our criminal code is the lack of comprehensive definition of the acts or the intention which can be defined as human trafficking, which leads to lack of prosecution and the short sentences of merely 2 or 3 years. That is the direction that the Republic of Korea is intending to take, and very fully aware of being a necessary step in promoting the elimination of this transnational crime of human trafficking. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker on my list is the distinguished representative of the United Kingdom. Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you, Your Honorable Chair. The delegation of United Kingdom recognizes the efforts in improving the rights of children. However, the delegate of United Kingdom is concerned about some issues. Ever since the corporal punishment has been officially prohibited from 2011 in every classroom, still many Korean teachers and some parents raise with corporal punishment, which is becoming more concern and worsening discipline issues. How does the Ministry of Education in Korea plan to protect the children's rights in school from worse environment? Thank you.
Thank you, delegation of the United Kingdom, for your distinguished efforts and interest in promoting and protecting the human rights in the international community. The delegation of Republic of Korea would like to respond that regarding corporal punishment in schools, the enforcement decree of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act was amended first in 2011 so that the use of tools on the body to inflict pain on the student is forbidden. Since then, there has been several amendments from 2014 to 2018 to make sure that it fits the current situation in Korea. And in 2015, the Interministerial Committee on Countering Child Abuse was launched so that it could specialize in the child abuse going on in the school environment. Also, the delegation of the Republic of Korea would like to express that the government is taking preventive education on the school violence and corporal punishment in schools, and also designated police investigative team, and also designated prosecutors exclusively in charge of the school violence. Thank you.
Thank you. The next delegation is the distinguished representative of Algeria. Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you, Honorable Chairs. Government of Algeria are concerned with the Republic of Korea's efforts to minimize hazardous chemical substances is inefficient, even though Republic of Korea have been made efforts to enhance system to release information on hazardous chemical substances. We would like to know how Republic of Korea would take measures so that government and companies work together to reduce hazardous substances in the air and water. Thank you.
Thank you, delegation, for the question. In regards to the emission of carbon, this delegation would like to first elaborate and first state that the Republic of Korea is a very vulnerable state, as it has been affected more by climate change than other countries. To elaborate, the average rise in temperature is twice the international average, while the rising sea level average is 3 times the international average. So thus, this nation is well aware of the fact that it needs to further protect its citizens from such changes. And in regards to do so, the delegation, the Ministry of Environment as well as Land, Infrastructure and Transport has adopted a low carbon model based on green growth in order to pursue their in order to do so. And in regards to this, the delegation, this ministry has outlined mainly 5 schemes that has enabled us to do so. The first is the establishment of the National Greenhouse Gas Inventory, in which we are tracking the amount of greenhouse gases that we are emitting. Number 2 is the Korea Voluntary Emission Reduction Scheme, in which companies voluntarily register the amount of emissions that they will emit and voluntarily express how they are working to reduce such emissions. Number 3 is the Target Management Scheme, in which the government in its various sectors announce how they will reduce their emissions. Number 4 is the Public Sector Target Management Scheme, which is similar, except it does incorporate more assistance from, it incorporates targets as the government as a whole. And finally, we have the Korean Emissions Trading Scheme, in which is the second biggest national emissions trading system in the world. And this scheme allows us to trade emissions within the regions of our own country. And through this, we are trying to reduce the amount of emissions. Thank you.
Thank you. The next delegation is the distinguished representative of the Philippines.
Thank you, Your Excellency. The delegation of the Philippines would like to ask a question concerning sexual violence. Currently, the rape law of the Republic of Korea defines sexual violence as rape only when vaginal penetration has taken place. This has led victims of other forms of sexual violence, including male victims of sexual violence, to have less opportunities to seek legal recourse as well as to be stigmatized. Can the South Korean government elaborate on the efforts which have been taken to increase legal recognition and decrease stigma for victims of other forms of sexual violence as defined under the law on rape? Thank you.
Thank you, the delegation of Philippines, for the question. And the Ministry of Gender Equality and Family would like to answer on the question of sexual violence. That the government is actually taking several measures to prevent the victims to help victims overcome their physical and mental problems. And the government also takes several measures. And to elaborate first, the government is actually running the emergency call center 1366 for women, and it is to help women get help in emergency by calling, but also they can receive counseling service whenever they need. And this service also links the victims to other medical, counseling, legal, and accommodation shelter services. And also we also have offline centers nationwide that can help out the victims. And these service centers also work on linking the victims to medical institutions and accommodation shelters. And the government also provides medical expenses for the victims and their infants, if there are any. And the government also provides recovery program for the victims. It includes programs that can help them to live independently. So the government provides counseling and educational services, and also the educational services that can provide the attackers from doing any more sexual violence events. And the government also worked on strengthening several legal measures. Although it's not directly related to rape, we would like to mention, this delegation would like to mention that there are several laws related to hidden camera crimes that the government strengthened. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker on our list is the distinguished representative of New Zealand. Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you, Your Honourable Chair, and delegations of other countries. As the delegation of New Zealand, I would like to express concern regarding Article 70 of the Act on the Promotion of Information and Communication Network and Protection. According to the article, a person who discloses facts with a purpose of disparaging his or her reputation commits a crime of defamation, and the person could be punished by imprisonment or fine. Accordingly, New Zealand would like to ask if the government has a plan to repeal the article due to its potential of inhibiting freedom of opinion and expression.
This delegation has aimed to cooperate and work closely with human rights treaty bodies by intensifying its efforts in implementing its recommendations. However, the problem lies in its implementation, as currently in South Korea, laws allows punishment of up to 3 years in prison for disclosing factual information and up to 7 years for statements considered false. The law punishes defamation of decreased persons as well. The maximum punishment is 2 years imprisonment. The current efforts has been made by the ROK. If the government finds prohibited materials, it has the authority to warn a user. If the prohibited materials are not removed, the user account may be blocked. In addition, a task force in the Seoul Central District Prosecutor's Office monitored that internet for false information removed when it's discovered. This delegation is also considering to mention the current efforts of, according to the third cycle of the ROK's national report, freedom of expression on the internet is protected as much as possible in accordance with the Constitution and relevant laws. So to protect the privacy and reputations of individuals in any measures, or according to Article 44-2 under the Information and Communication Network Act, it stipulates that any information that violates other people's rights is subject to ad hoc measures. Thank you.
Thank you. The next is the distinguished representative of Brazil. Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Recently, allegations have been raised in the past that several members of a group of DPRK citizens that came to the Republic of Korea in April 2016 have not come here voluntarily. The state of Brazil aligns itself with the remark of the UN Special Rapporteur on the human rights situation in the DPRK, recommending a total and independent investigation of these allegations. Brazil welcomes that the Republic of Korea ratified the protocol to prevent, suppress, and punish trafficking in persons, especially women and children, without reservations in November 2015. But the state of Brazil is also concerned that this case just mentioned might bring together two important elements defining human trafficking. Several victims claim to have been coerced to come here, and they are not allowed to return legally to the DPRK. What measures is the ROK taking, also considering its current reform of the National Intelligence Service to ensure the guidance by the international law by state institutions and prevent such cases in the future? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Delegation of Brazil, for your sustained interest in the matter of human trafficking, as well as not limited to Northeastern Asian region, but also the DPRK and other North Korean issues as well. The government of the Republic of Korea is fully aware of some limitations that have been raised in regard to the DPRK and peoples that have been negated to go back legally to their home countries. The government of the Republic of Korea would like to highlight the fact that there has been newly established department within the National Police Agency of the ROK that is in charge of the human trafficking only, and it is very comprehensive and is fully trained, not only in cooperation with other agencies, but also the non-governmental organizations. This agency and this division in particular will be in charge of victim support as well as investigating the matters as the delegation have raised previously, and also will be connected to strengthening the actions to persecute and prosecute some relevant crimes of the human trafficking. And it is very encouraging from the perspective of the government of the Republic of Korea to give full victim support with the hard work of this division under the NPA to break the vicious cycle of how the people have been humanly trafficked, came to Korea through human trafficking, rather than just reporting back to their own home countries. And this will be possible through the active cooperation between the divisions and ministries in providing victim supports to the human traffickers. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is the distinguished representative of Fiji. Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you, President. The delegation of Fiji got deeply impressed about Republic of Korea democratic candlelight protest last year. We know that many teenagers also participated in this political protest. There is a growing demand in Korea that teenagers want to have the right to vote. However, in 2014, the Constitutional Court in Republic of Korea said teenagers under 19 are still in the process of forming a political or social viewpoint, and they have to rely on his or her parents and teachers for his or her age in daily life. Therefore, their political decision is easily affected by others. It is reasonable that teenagers do not have the right of vote. We wonder the Korean government's opinion about this problem.
Honorable Chair and the distinguished delegates, and thank you to the delegate of Fiji for raising such a very fruitful question for the delegation of the Republic of Korea. Currently, in the Republic of Korea, teenagers and until the high school students do not have the right to vote, and the South Korean government also recognizes the voice by the teenagers and the high schoolers and also some middle school students to express their voice to the politics. However, the Korean society and the South Korean government and also the court itself is also concerned with the possibility that whether the current high school students of South Korea actually are capable of making the very independent decision by themselves and very neutral decisions that they want to make. Currently, in the Republic of Korea, it is not mandatory to study the law or politics or any other social issues during the current education system. In the South Korea, every student learns different majors and different subjects until they go to the university. So while in the current status quo that it is not mandatory for the students to study the politics and law, then it is very dangerous for them dangerous for us to allow the high schoolers and the teenagers have the right to vote, because, well, there are students and there's teachers at the classrooms, and since it's a not bottom-up, but the top-down approach in the high school classrooms, there is a high possibility that they might be affected by the teachers, and rather those teachers' thoughts would be rather more emerging in the Korean voting system. So the South Korean government is likely to take the very careful steps in acknowledging the teenagers' right to vote. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is the distinguished representative of Jordan. Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you. In Madagascar, Ambatobi nickel mining project has led to serious environmental problems, critically damaging endangered species and the health of local residents. The government institute, Korea Resources Corporation, has the 27.5% of the shares in the Ambatobi project. Also, Korea Exim Bank is financing the project. This is just one example of Korea's many overseas projects which Jordan may be affected too. International financing of construction projects has obligation of complying with International Finance Corporation Performance Standards, IFC-PS, to minimize the environmental consequences, which is strictly followed worldwide. Japan has even developed its own environmental policy benchmarking the IFC-PS, whereas Korea has none. The delegation of Jordan would like to ask what kind of efforts the ROK government will make to comply with the IFC-PS. Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, Delegate of Jordan, we'd like to express our sincere gratitude toward your continued interest and efforts toward the matter regarding the Madagascar issue and all the other issues that related to the savior of the living rights and also regarding the FCC. But first of all, we'd like to clarify, the Ministry of Environment would like to clarify, first of all, regarding the financial issues or either the right to be protected for the citizens to have a clean environment in order to live, we're providing number one, the right to residents where their house itself is protected, and it was also included in the response for the special rapporteur in line with the liability that the ROK actually holds. First of all, in February 2015, the government actually conducted a massive crackdown on 86 business sites located in the area concerned. Even though it was the research itself was conducted within the Korea, we do believe that these kinds of the research projects or the results that come from these similar incidents could actually be applied to the case of Madagascar, or either a similar incident, even if it does not. Even if there is no IFCC or the clauses pertaining to that currently pre-existing in the current status quo. So thus, of those, 62 business sites were found to violate laws, but still they were either prosecuted or taken under administrative measures, especially tech foundries caught emitting certain hazardous air pollutants that were ordered to shut down. From May 2015 to April 2016, there was also another nationwide inspections that were conducted, targeting those areas in similar conditions in Gimpo area, and the offenders were later brought to appropriate legal or administrative measures. So thus, we do believe that the government recognizes the need to enhance the current site regulations, even whether it be in-work domestic or whether it be overseas, thus in order to prevent small-scale business sites and also medium enterprises and regarding their environmental rights. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker on our list is the distinguished representative of Vietnam. Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. The delegation of Vietnam is aware that, according to recent statistics, Vietnamese women are now the dominant nationality in the category of migrant brides in the Republic of Korea, and there have been reports of issues during settlement and claims of fraudulence regarding marriage broker agencies. Can the Ministry of Gender Inequality and Family please elaborate on steps they have taken to improve the safety of Vietnamese migrant brides that migrate to the Republic of Korea, and specifically what progress has been made with measures taken to improve integration, and have measures been put in place to tackle these claims of fraudulence with regard to the marriage broker agencies? Thank you very much.
First of all, thank you for the delegate of Vietnam for raising that issue. The ROK acknowledges the problem of migrant rights who come to Korea, and the ROK believes that to solve these problems, the perceptions of the public is the most important solution. And in order to enhance education on public perception on the gender equality, first of all, there is an education curriculum by the Institute of Gender Equality Promotion and Education for public officials, and the education program aims to guarantee fair policies and social atmosphere related to gender equality. And also, the Korea Institute of Gender Equality Promotion and Education is also responsible for training teachers that teach sexual violence and domestic violence prevention education. And along with this educational enhancements, the ROK is doing its best to solve the domestic violence that might happen with the migrant brides. And there is emergency call center 1366 for women who have suffered from domestic violence, and the migrant women can reach the service to solve their problem of domestic violence that they might face. And in addition to the calling center, there are offline domestic violence counseling centers nationwide, and these service centers also work on linking these victims to medical institutions and accommodation shelters. And the ROK will do its best to guarantee the migrant rights and their acknowledgement of the service provided by the ROK. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your statements. This brings us to the end of the first round of questions and responses. Before proceeding with the second round of questions and responses, let me remind you, please finish your intervention with the phrase, thank you. Most of you have done well, but some delegations have just forgot to say thank you. The second point is, if you wish to take the floor again, please put your name plate in this position, so we will notice that you wish to take the floor again. And for the remaining speaking time, the speaking time is available for you. Now we will proceed with the second round of questions and responses. The first speaker on our list is the distinguished representative of Ecuador. Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you, Excellency. Fellow delegates, the Ecuadorian delegation is aware that the delegation of the ROK has yet to comment on the lack of participation of the state as a partner in the global alliance powering past coal, despite express verbal commitments towards implementing measures to combat climate change. The alliance is a global effort in which signatories are committed to phasing out coal power, reducing carbon emissions, and supporting clean power policies and investments, while restricting financing for coal plants. Signatories share real-world examples and best practices on methods to phase out coal, scale up financing, and develop plans for clean energy. The Ecuadorian delegation thus invites the delegation of the ROK to comment on the issue. Thank you.
Thank you, first of all, to the delegate of Ecuador to show your continued interest onto this problem of energy efficiency and also providing cleaner energy around the world. First of all, in line with the principles, the Republic of Korea has come with numerous policies despite its lack of participation in certain aspects, since we have devised our own policy and based on the SWOT analysis that the Republic of Korea has, the Ministry of Environment has conducted. Number one, we're trying to have a further implementation regarding the nuclear reactors, which provides the 1/3 of nation's electricity because it's the most affordable clean, sustainable, and cost-effective method, and also an energy source so far. And based on the SWOT analysis of having the Republic of Korea's Ministry of Environment exclusively having the government determination of self-sufficient energy as one of the strengths, and also in line with the corporation's growing interest in green growth and resource development, we have come up with several policy actions and programs that comply to this analysis. Number one, it's a feed-in tariff policy where the government compensates power reducers for price differences between market and production costs. And we do believe that this will be a sufficient method to provide an alternative as the response. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker on our list is the distinguished representative of Spain. You have the floor.
Thank you, Honorable Chairs. The South Korean government stated in the national report that it will revise the legislation concerning freedom of opinions and speech. Currently, what kind of issues are most prioritized by the Republic of Korea government to revise in legislation?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Delegate, for raising the concern. The ROK acknowledges the importance of such human rights issues, inclusive to, as mentioned previously, the ROK has one of the highest levels of internet connectivity in the region and the world, where more than 80% of households have access to fast broadband internet connection. Therefore, the ROK is in full consideration of assessments of implementation of CIVIC accordingly to the civic space recommendations submitted by Civicus, which was recommended from USA to provide training to law enforcement officers on proper enforcement of the national security law, to avoid investigations, detentions, and charges that restrict freedom of expression and result in a climate of self-censorship. This has been partially implemented currently, and in this regard, also from the United Nations Rights Committee has expressed that the prohibition by law of untrue or unverified information regarding the spread of false information constitutes a disproportionate restriction of the right to freedom of expression. So the following current efforts has been made to take this under consideration. The ROK would like to express its current efforts in resolving this issue through the following previously mentioned efforts. And thank you, Delegate of Spain, for raising the concern. Thank you.
Thank you. Does the representative of Spain wishes to take the floor again? No? That's not the case. Then we will move on to the next speaker, which is the distinguished representative of Mexico.
Thank you, Chairperson, and we would like to thank the ROK for making continuous efforts to eliminate human trafficking. However, we would like to raise the question of, while we have the awareness that there is an effort by the Ministry of Justice to expand and challenge the definition of human trafficking itself, the state of Mexico is well concerned in terms of the sentencing and the active efforts made to create deterrence and provide justice for those who are affiliated with human trafficking itself, which we also believe, as the state of Vietnam also stated, the migrant rights is also a concerning issue of human trafficking itself being industrialized. Is there any efforts to revise and put heavier sentencing among those who are convicted?
Thank you, Delegation of Mexico. We believe, the ROK government believes that the primary efforts of our government should be dedicated not only towards prosecution but also at prevention. And one of the most fundamental deterrents to a harsher sentencing or even prosecution itself is the lack of evidence presented in a court, which prevents the actual perpetrators to be prosecuted. And we believe that could be resolved through not only harsher sentencing but also providing education or information to the victims themselves, who can present a more reliable evidence in the court, and which can lead to more substantial sentencing and punishment. We also, as previously stated multiple times, we are very aware of the limited sentencing, and ROK government is willing to look into, investigate, and examine the implementation of a harsher sentencing after we have conducted sufficient report and studies to be able to conclude which would be the apt amount of sentencing. But until then, we are going to be more focused on providing more programs for victims and also to law enforcement officers. Thank you.
Thank you. Then I will move to the next speaker, which is the distinguished representative of the United Kingdom. The floor is yours.
Thank you for the Honorable Chair and the government of ROK for putting all the efforts on making the right of children better and better. However, the government of the United Kingdom want to raise a question about the academic elitism issue in Korea. So academic elitism in Korea seems to pressure the whole society and for the children, especially young students who are preparing for the private high schools. The special purpose high schools and also the university entrance exams are said to have high rates of suicide rates among the youths. And this will also affect their mental health and the physical health. How does the government of South Korea, and especially for the Ministry of Education, recognize this issue and establish a way to solve it? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the delegate of the United Kingdom for raising a nice question for the delegation of the Republic of Korea. The delegation of the Republic of Korea is also aware of the Korean academic elitism and its meritocracy causing tremendous amount of pressure for the Korean students currently in the Republic of Korea. And so, since South Korean government has been aware of this issue from the several past governments and the past administrations, the South Korean government has enacted the Student Human Rights Act currently in Seoul, Gyeonggi Province, Gwangju, Jeolla, North Province, and Incheon and Daejeon. And South Korean government is trying to expand this Student Human Rights Act into other parts of the Korean Peninsula as well. And according to the statistics and also the several research by the Korean universities, it has shown that the actual burden and the time of the student self-study, which is called 야간 자율학습 in Korean at night, the total amount of time has actually decreased about 20 hours per week. And the South Korean government believes that this is one of the big developments in order to decrease the pressure on the students. And also, the South Korean government is still, and the Ministry of Education especially, is amending the Korean SAT in order to decrease the pressure for the South Korean students, in order to make the absolute grading for the English exam, and also providing better public education via EBS, one of the public education broadcasting system in South Korea. And the South Korean government, even though it has achieved many successes in the past in order to decrease the pressure on the South Korean students, the South Koreans and the Republic of Korea would like to still do more in order to decrease the pressure for the teenagers and allow them to have a freer and happier life during their age of teenage. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is the distinguished representative of Algeria.
Thank you, Your Honorable Chairs. We welcome Republic of Korea's policy in improving environmental issues, for example, by collecting data, collection of hazardous chemicals, and implementing low-carbon model and nuclear reactors. However, we are further concerned with chemical issues in South Korea. Regarding hazardous chemical in the air and air quality of the Republic of Korea, how would the government take measures to ensure the safety of children, active places such as playground, in order to protect their rights to a healthy life? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. In regards to reducing the amount of damage from air pollution to children, the delegation with this ministry would like to first talk about the two plans that were made in order to address this problem. The first is the second comprehensive plan for air quality improvement of 2016 to 2024. And the second plan is the second Seoul Metropolitan Air Quality Improvement Plan from 2015 to 2024. In regards to this, it states that the main two reasons for air pollution is first the industry and second road transport. In regards to this, the delegation of Korea has implemented policies such as, but not limited to, creating the nation's existing industries while creating new green industries that provide environmental goods and services, as well as creating action plans for green buildings amongst other actions. And in regards specifically to the assistance of children, the Republic of Korea is currently organizing a committee known as the Environmental Health Committee, which it consists of relevant government agencies and experts that organize in order to discuss and deliberate matters relevant to environmental health, especially towards children. And this is done in order to ensure that the fragmentation that results in protection gaps does not occur. And this is how we are currently attempting to solve the situation. Thank you.
The next speaker is the distinguished representative of the Philippines. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Your Honorable Chair. We would like to ask a question regarding the gender wage gap. So currently the gender wage gap in the Republic of Korea remains among the highest among Northeast Asian countries. And the delegation of the Philippines applauds the efforts of the South Korean government to promote policies within companies which seek to lessen this gap. However, we would like to ask what measures the government has taken to ensure that the wage gap is lessened not only within companies, but also on a wider scale across South Korean society. And we would furthermore like to ask what monitoring mechanisms are in place to ensure that efforts are being made to lessen the gender wage gap. Thank you very much.
First of all, thank you for the delegation of Philippines for raising that issue. Related to the gender wage gap in Korea, there are legal basis for prohibiting gender wage gap in the Article 11 of the Constitution and the international conventions that the ROK already ratified. And in 2018 Cabinet Council, it was decided to expand the range of Non-Discrimination Act and wage to workplaces with less than 5 people starting 2019. And this revised enforcement ordinance will allow the Ministry of Employment and Labor to assign labor inspectors even to small workplaces with less than 5 people. And these inspectors work as judicial police in the workplace, guarantee the protection of workers. And in regards to the monitoring system, there is monitoring policy by designating honorary equal employment inspector in each company. And these inspectors are designated among the workers by recommendation, and they work to promote the equal employment in the workplace. And more specifically, they provide counseling and advice to workers who are victims in the event of discrimination in the workplace, and proceed autonomous inspection and guidance conducted to see the status of compliance with equal environment. And these honorary inspectors have the right to report any violations seen in the workplace. And through these continuous inspections, discriminations in workplace such as gender wage gap is being monitored and regulated continuously. And additionally, there is an incentive policy for the enterprises with outstanding performance in gender equality in employment. And with rewarding and giving incentives to these companies, the ROK hopes that there will be the improvement of society's overall acknowledgement of the matter. Thank you.
Pardon me for the interruption. The next speaker on our list is the distinguished representative of New Zealand.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. New Zealand would like to raise a question in regards to Korea Communications Standard Commission, which checks and evaluates TV programs before they are transmitted. Can ROK please explain the significance of the communication, and also could ROK explain if the commission is independent and impartial? Thank you.
The delegate expressed gratitude towards the delegate of New Zealand for taking consideration regarding the ROK issue of considering the communications and how is it impartial. So the delegate of ROK would like to start from mentioning that the Korean censorship standards on internet is do have a strict censorship or content restrictions. Accordingly to the Korea Communication Standards Commission maintains ethical standards in broadcasting and international communications as well. And yet the problem of such inability to execute such recommendations from previous cycles has been because of the concerns raised that there is no clear provisions to determine whether the information on the internet violates another person's right to reputation, or because of other non-permissible grounds, and that the ISPs and the KCSEs are given the discretionary power to make that decision. However, this allegation would like to highlight that the following considerations are under consideration on the basis of Article 44(7) of the Network Act. The KCSE ordered the deletion of 58 postings which allegedly encouraged the previous boycott, and some of the individuals who were involved were sentenced to imprisonment or were fined. These are based on this previous case mentioned. The ROK would like to express that current efforts are in resolving this mentioned issue is under progress and review. Thank you.
Thank you. The next delegation is the distinguished representative of Brazil. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. The state of Brazil would like to return to the first question asked in the first round. And the state of Brazil is aware that South Korea doesn't allow South Korean citizens to change their citizenship back to the DPRK, or if they came from there back to DPRK citizenship. And the state of Brazil thinks that is a major obstacle to resolve these allegations if they are confirmed, or might be an obstacle for future cases. What is the position of the Republic of Korea on these legal limitations to solve those issues, and what possibilities does the government see to allow South Korean citizens to give up their original citizenship? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Delegation of Brazil. The ROK government indeed truly believes that the issue of citizenship and sending back the victims to be one of the fundamental pillars of approaching as well as solving this imminent issue of human trafficking. However, the government believes that in eliminating this prominent issues of human trafficking, what is more important and what the government is intending to more focus on is not merely sending back the victims back to countries of origin. The government of the Republic of Korea believes that in eliminating the human rights, the government needs to examine much in depth the push factors that leads to countries to become the origin of the victims, and also examine more in depth the pull factors that can create the demand for the human trafficking. In this regard, the government would like to refer to economic hardships or war or lack of education as one of the push factors that can be involved in this issue of human trafficking, whereas the pull factors may include increasing tendencies for exploitation as well as demand for sexual trades as well as pornography or prostitution. One of the reasons that the DPRK citizens come to Korea through diverse means not only limited to human trafficking is economic hardship as well as the debt bondage that they are tied to. And the government of the Republic of Korea would like to address these push factors in advance to persecuting or making amendments to citizenship or legal support in order to further give full support to the victims, and as we have previously mentioned in the first round of the recommendation, to eliminate the vicious cycle of demand and provisions. Thank you.
Thank you. The next delegation is the distinguished representative of Fiji.
Thank you, Honorable Chair.
Thank you for our Republic of Korea's great effort for children education. However, our delegation thinks there is a blind spot on the caring of children. Recently, we saw some heartbreaking incidents involving daycare centers in Korea. For example, in ROK daycare center, the teacher strangled the child to death by covering his face with a blanket for a long time for not sleeping. Also, a four-year-old boy was killed in a school bus after being left for a long time because of teachers' careless. Our delegations believe this incident is caused by teachers' poor qualification, salary, and excessive work sharing, like 25 children per one teacher. Delegations of Fiji want to ask how will Republic of Korea government will solve this problem. Thank you.
First of all, thank you, Delegation of Fiji, for the continued efforts on interacting, engaging in the interactive dialogue. The Delegation of Republic of Korea agrees with the significance of the child abuse problem going on in child care services. However, the Delegation of Republic of Korea would like to respond by highlighting that the National Human Rights Commission of Korea had established a division for child and juveniles and the Child Rights Committee to strengthen independent monitoring of the implementation of the provisions of the Convention on the Rights of the Children. Also, the Republic of Korea has been adopting special measures to prevent child abuse and violence, including the early identification of child abuse and the provision of the support to child victims and legal provisions providing for the severe punishment of perpetrators, such as the harsh trainings. And also, the Republic of Korea would like to make amendments to enforce a more harsh qualification system for the teachers and trainers of the child care services, and so that we could strengthen the ethic criteria while in the qualification process of the child care instructors. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker on our list is the distinguished representative of Jordan. The floor is yours.
Thank you. In ROK, recent household products have caused serious environmental and public health consequences in organic, eco-friendly products. For example, non-toxic paints, which contain toxic preservatives that cause skin reactions. Not only these, sanitary pads were found to contain carcinogenic chemical substance, which some were advertised organic. And in 2017, toxic chemicals such as phthalate plasticizer have been found in eco-friendly yoga mats. The delegation of Jordan would like to ask if ROK government has plans to strengthen regulatory frameworks on eco-friendly, non-toxic product, false advertising, developing environmental standards, and regular monitoring procedures to prevent repeated occurrences. Thank you.
Thank you once again to Delegate of Jordan for your concern regarding the organic matters. First of all, we'd like to clarify that there has been a recurring incident, as Delegate of Jordan mentioned, such as having the oxysaksak, as we have previously mentioned, which was a very harmful chemical that has been transformed or has been disguised as not being harmful. So there was, in regards to the Act on Registration and Evaluation of Chemical Substances, the delegate of ROK has already taken the liability by responding to the special rapporteur's worries regarding the hazard information not generated by the chemical manufacturer in order to ascertain whether the chemical is actually safe or for their intended use. So the ROK's response, thus, we'd like to constantly pursue the preventive measures that has been taken to avoid incidents similar to the humidifier or either the sanitary pads disinfection incident. In January 2015, IRECS, I-R-E-C-S, entered into the force. Thus, the act itself actually required the chemical manufacturers to register the new use of substances if they were newly registered, or either to inform the registered uses of their substances toward the downstream users. So thus, in other words, we believe that a manufacturer who intends to actually change or disguise the use of the substance or the source of the substance will have to register for the hazardous data once again. Thus, we do believe that through these kind of policies that have been constantly tackling the recurring problems, the Ministry of Environment believes that these kind of recurring problems will not happen again, and thus will be an effective preventive measure also in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. And now the last speaker on our list is the distinguished representative of Vietnam. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. The delegation of Vietnam is aware that according to statistics, there is a high rate of poverty among the elderly population in the Republic of Korea. And there have been reports that older ladies, commonly referred to as ajumas, have had to resort to prostitution to survive. And with light shed on discrimination in the workforce, particularly towards older ladies that are last hired and first fired, can the Ministry of Employment and Labour and the Ministry of Gender and Equality and Family elaborate on any measures being taken to tackle this age-related gender discrimination in the workplace? Thank you.
Thank you, the delegation of Vietnam, for pointing out the issue. And the Ministry of Employment and Labor also agrees that there are problems related to discrimination of women, especially in the older population. And this delegation believes that it also includes the career break, which is one of the reasons why they are suffering from finding new jobs. And therefore, the government is actually providing several services that old generations, especially women who quit jobs because of their marriage or pregnancy, can restart their working. And therefore, the government provides offline centers that can provide job counseling, education, internship, and support services after employment. And it also provides online service named Dream Wings, which provides job counseling and online education for old women who are willing to find new jobs or to restart their employment. And the government also, to prevent the career break, we have ratified and revised our Act on Equal Employment Law to allow paternity and maternity leave also for receiving artificial insemination or in vitro fertilization treatment. And the government also allowed maternity or paternity leave for workers who have been working for more than 6 months, while it used to be only for workers who were working more than a year. And this is how the government is trying to help the old generation women to restart their jobs or find new jobs in proper ways and to avoid them from falling into prostitution. Thank you.
I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Iran for additional questions and responses. You have the floor.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Our delegation is concerned about the situation of ROK government, which maintains a broad-ranging approach towards the regulation of specific online content and imposes a substantial level of censorship on a large number of websites that the government deems socially harmful, according to the National Security Act and Telecommunication Business Law. Our delegation would like the delegation of ROK to provide more information. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate of Iran. As previously answered by this delegation about the same question about the censorship or content restrictions that's currently complied by according to Korea Communication Standards Commission maintains ethical standards and internet communications, as well as to provide you the further responses to the same question. The delegate would like to highlight the fact that the Constitution of the Republic of Korea do recognize its fundamental human rights, including the rights of freedom of expression in the press, and therefore, which is guaranteed in the Article of 21 of the Constitution. Hope this gives you a full response and continues to be from the previous response. That was it.
Thank you. The next speaker on our list is the distinguished representative of the Russian Federation. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Honorable President. The delegation of Russia is concerned by the recent reported increase of human trafficking in Russia. Prostitution in particular in Russia due to the relaxed issuance of visa for the 2018 World Cup. Therefore, the delegation of Russia would like to invite ROK to share its plans for tackling sex trafficking, as mentioned in their national report, so that Russia can be enlightened and prepare for arranging cooperations between the two nations. Thank you so much.
We would like to thank the delegation of Russia in their continued efforts in cooperating in solving the transnational crime of human trafficking. The Ministry of Migration reports that the Russian women who travel to Korea primarily obtain the type C2 or C3 visas, and there's an increasing use of such type visas for human trafficking, as opposed to traditional means of the E62 visa, which was issued for entertainment. Korean government is currently conducting such measures, including evaluating the contracts through which those women come to Korea by, and monitoring those sponsoring firms, and predetermining the potential victims within those low socioeconomic groups who are typically the victims of human trafficking, and they are continuing sustained surveillance of industries who are prominent in international human trafficking. Also, in line with the prosecution law, the Criminal Act in Korea, Article 296, Paragraph 2, we apply the universality principle in which Koreans conduct the same punishable crime not within Korean borders equally as they would have been when they committed the crime within Korean borders. Also, we are administrating, the Ministry of Gender Equality and Family administers programs and symposiums concerning women's rights in compliance with the recommendations made by the Committee on Eliminating Discrimination Against Women. Also, the National Police Agency, in cooperation with the Ministry of Ocean and Fisheries, keep a keen eye on vessels who might contain illegal imported females. Thank you.
Thank you. The next delegation on our list of speakers is the distinguished representative of the Solomon Islands. The floor is yours.
Thank you, the Honorable Chair. In relation to the Universal Birth Registration System, the delegation from the Solomon Islands acknowledged the progress and efforts made by the ROK government in this area to enhance the rights of children. And we would like to invite the delegation of ROK to provide more elaboration on the side effects of adopting the Universal Birth Registration System. And apart from the preliminary measures mentioned in the national report, we'd also like to know whether there are other concrete measures to be taken for addressing this issue in the future. Thank you.
Honorable Chair and the distinguished delegates, thank you to the delegate of Solomon Islands for bringing up the significant issue. And this delegate of the Republic of Korea, as already mentioned in his and her national reports, is very aware of the necessity of the universal birth registration and is aware of those undocumented and unregistered children in the Korean Peninsula who are not being protected under the law. But as already mentioned, and already the delegate of Solomon Islands have pointed out, there are several side effects of the universal birth registration in South Korea, because if the UBR is implemented, then it becomes mandatory for the hospital to register the infant right after the birth. However, if those unwed mothers or the single mothers, they do not want their giving birth to be known, to be public, and they will try to give birth in the places other than the hospital because they do not want their giving birth to be recorded. And in that case, that will be very highly detrimental in a health sense to those both infant and the mothers. And also, it is sort of passing the buck and passing the responsibility to the hospital, which should be done by the parents, not the hospital. But even though there are several side effects in the South Korea, this Republic of Korea will try to implement the universal birth registration in the long term, but in the short term, the Korean government asked the international society to respect the decisions of the government of the Republic of Korea to first not implement the UBR, but take more careful measures. Thank you.
Thank you. And the last speaker on our list of speakers is the distinguished representative of Mongolia.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. In the Republic of Korea's national report, it cited articles educating women on how to handle these sexual violence. However, studies show that 64.4% of women are worried that they may be victims of crime and feel that the justice system cannot help them. Thus, they would choose to voice their hardships in other methods, such as the recent #MeToo movement. Thus, many cases of sexual crime have actually gone untried. So what special measures has the Republic of Korea taken to ease the situation and for women to gain confidence in the justice system? Thank you.
First of all, thank you, the delegation of Mongolia, for bringing that issue up. And the ROK is aware of the fact that the sexual violence against women is a very serious matter in ROK nowadays. And accordingly, ROK has revised many laws to prevent these matters. First of all, to specifically talk about the specific matters, for hidden camera crimes, which is a very serious problem in Korea, the National Assembly has initiated a bill that provides harsher punishment on hidden camera crimes. And the initiative proposes to define an act of hidden camera crime, spreading sexual photos or videos that were taken without permission as sexual violence. And also, for the dating violence, which is also a serious and imminent matter in Korea, we implemented a 3-strike system, which makes the people who commit date abuse crimes at least 3 times to the same victim, and they will be headed to the court even though the victim does not wish to punish the offender. And also the response system for the police on the scene of the dating violence was amended to provide the victims with protective measures and the assailants with written warnings on the scene.
And to add up, the ROK believes that in order to promote gender equality in our country, it is important to educate the next generations. And in order to do that, this country is monitoring the media, since the media plays an important role in affecting the public opinion and overall perception on gender issues. First, the Institute of Gender Equality and Promotion evaluates broadcasts and news articles and rewards ones that contributed to promote gender equality. And in order to help women to feel safer, this country is working on promoting gender equality through education for next generations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. This was, I think, truly the last speaker on our list. And this brings us to the end of the second round of additional questions and responses. And I would like to thank the delegation of the Republic of Korea for taking up the questions, recommendations, and comments again this afternoon. This concludes this exceptional meeting, and now we will resume with the review of China in 5 minutes. Thank you. The meeting is